Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cashflow Project. I'm your host, Vince Gethings with Tri-City Equity Group. And today we have Stephen Petasky on the show. Stephen is the CEO and founder of the Luxus Group with offices in Canada, US, and Italy. Over the last 15 years, Stephen has been on a journey to help others find their why and discover how luxury, vacation rental, real estate can enrich their lives. And on top of all that, Stephen has been recognized as one of Canada's top 40 under 40 business leaders, which is a huge accomplishment. And I'm really excited to dive into this show. Stephen, welcome.
Thanks very much for having me, Vince. Look forward to the show. Let's kick it off.
Let's do it. So I guess outside of the quick intro I did, tell us a little about yourself, of your background, and how you got into real estate.
Absolutely. So started real estate about 15 years ago. We actually just celebrated our 15th anniversary of the Luxus Group. And people sometimes wonder why the name Luxus. They think it's a spinoff of like the car company Lexus, but it's actually Luxus is the Latin word for luxury. So when we started it, we had this big aspirations of being this luxury group of real estate, but we really started off with one property 15 years ago. And but now the dream has coming alive every single year as we create, develop, manage more luxury communities in different parts of the world. So it's been a very, very fun ride. I'm sure we'll dive into that a bit today. And wife and I started it. She was a journalist actually, and now she's retired from that career. 2 kids, 15 and 12, and it's been a wonderful ride for sure.
Awesome. So 15 years, a lot has happened. I think you've gone through 2008, 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
You've gone through COVID. So lots of stuff to talk about, lots of lessons learned, I'm sure. So I guess let's start with the beginning of, why real estate over other asset classes, or why the luxury vacation niche versus any other option. Like me, I'm big on multifamily. So when you're going to go down through that list of like, okay, what niche do we want to get into for real estate? How did you arrive at luxury vacation rentals?
Absolutely. So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, never, even through university days, and never had a job once, which is interesting, even though I was a teenager. So it's been an interesting ride. I was just trying to basically find, see problems and find solutions. And I think that's what entrepreneurs really are great at, is, seeing a vision for solutions. And for me, I was always attracted to finding solutions for things that I'm attracted to. So in the case of travel, my wife and I, before my wife and I were married, love travel, love seeing different parts of the world, love doing it. And you would be like, hey, I'm staying in this like vacation rental or this hotel, and it could be better if, we did this or that. And that's just things that kind of percolate in your mind as you're going through that journey. And then eventually we saw one big problem that we wanted to create a solution for, and that was 2006. And basically the Great Recession had not started yet. That was kind of the peak of the market is 2006. You started to see a few cracks by the end of 2006 of what might be coming. Of course, no one had any indication of how significant it would ultimately be. And the problem we saw as my family, my wife and I, we had our child in February 2007, our son Cash. And it was super, amazing when you have a child. It's incredible. But what it does is change your whole world on travel. Like all of a sudden, taking a baby to Hawaii isn't quite as easy, or to Europe, or to, on a road trip or anything. So the problem we saw was travel's hard with kids. How do we make it easier? And without, completely reinventing the wheel. Well, we kind of did reinvent the wheel, and we created a product that effectively is a portfolio of second homes for clients, where you invest into a fund, and we were the fund manager. And as an investor in that fund, we would take that equity and we would acquire. I would say luxury would be maybe a bit of at that time, word of between 800,000 and 2 million was kind of the price point. So that's 15 years ago. So we felt luxury kind of suited it quite well at the time. And we, as investors, instead of actually renting them out, that particular fund, we kept it the use of the assets exclusively for the investors. So effectively, it was a form of co-ownership. And the part for my wife and I, we were the first investors. We convinced 17 other friends and family to jump in with us, raised $3.5 million. We bought a home or a condo in Maui. We bought a home in Phoenix, or Scottsdale rather, and we bought a lake property in Lake Okanagan in British Columbia, Canada. And our 18 owners, effectively 6 people per property, own these assets, and we got a chance to use them. So you get this benefit of this kind of long-term financial hold, capital preservation and appreciation, but also this utilization, which really was actually like a dividend, because instead of us having to rent vacation homes on Vrbo, which was the only thing, this is pre-Airbnb. It's hard to even imagine a time pre-Airbnb, but Vrbo was the only thing that really existed. And you actually now are staying in your own homes, effectively renting from yourself, producing your own personal cash flow, and you get a far better experience by staying in a private residence that's almost branded and operated like a hotel. That's what our company ultimately built. And versus staying in a Vrbo where the pictures, especially back then, it's got a lot more sophisticated since then, but the pictures online did not match up to the experience you received there. And that was the problem we solved. And it was a fun journey. 18 people turned into about 400, and 3 million turned into about 100 million over the course of a 7-year run. And that was a very aggressive scale up. We could talk about that if you like, but it all starts with one. One person, one idea, one property. And I think the number one thing that we liked about it was, which you asked them, like, why that over other things? I don't think I'm smart enough, frankly, to be a great multifamily guy or industrial guy or commercial guy. I just loved vacations, so that I poured all my energy into that aspect, and we became proficient at it through that, through that time. So now we would be, we would be certainly, I guess, a leader within the industry as it relates to it now. But back then, I didn't know nothing. I just knew I wanted to travel to those spots, and I convinced 17 friends to jump on the journey with me.
That's amazing. So you started with 3 houses, and then back 15 years ago, what year was that?
2007.
2007. So right before the market crash,
Yes.
right? So did that, before I finish my main question, how did 2007 or 2009 kind of impact your budding company there?
It was a scary time from about fall 2008 through spring 2010. So there was basically a 16 to 18 month run where we basically didn't grow at all because it was complete uncertainty and chaos. But as soon as we saw a glimmer, glimpse rather of, okay, I think it's stabilized. We think it's bouncing on the bottom. We got really aggressive on raising money. And we raised a lot of money from basically spring 2010 through to 2014. And frankly, we did very well. It was just it was the bottom of the market. Investors were referring everything. We never advertised. It was all word of mouth and people that enjoyed the experience of being an investor, but then also were seeking an ability to place in this unprecedented market of, homes going for the prices they're going. And we placed, multiple tens of millions of dollars in the vacation property market during that time. So that was so for me, it was very good. I looked at these cycles as huge opportunities. We're obviously entering a new cycle, and of course, no one has a crystal ball to define exactly what that is. But we know our micro markets pretty well, and so we're seeing where these opportunities are going to present themselves the next 3 years for us to potentially do another even more significant investment run with a new fund.
Got it. So are you sensing the same uncertainty that you saw in 2008 through 2010? Are you seeing that on the horizon now as we record this in, August 2022?
It's definitely different. Like if you look at the, macroeconomics about where we were in a supply situation back in 2008 compared to where we're today, it's not even close to the same.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you have the situation where inflation has happened. It's not necessarily, it's slowing down, but it's still going to be material for a period of time. There are some markets that have bubbles, but it was a real bubble in 2008. There was a massive run up due to free debt and massive amount of supply that all of a sudden burst. And that's why they took 3-4 years to recover. I think it's going to be a much softer landing. Some markets are going to be hit a little harder than others for sure that have, potentially supply issues coming online. But the difference of 2008, or to call it 2006 to 8, bringing on supply was so easy. They could just, in Phoenix, they could build another 10,000 home community in 3 years. Mm-hmm. Now everything is slow. And so even if there was a market trying to adjust, like say the last 24 months during COVID, by bringing supply in the market, COVID has prevented supply to come in the market at the pace that we've seen it for previous recessions. As a result, demand's going to soften, no question. It's already starting, but supply just can't come on fast enough. So I think we're actually see a softer landing. I think the opportunities aren't going to come at a macro level so much as I think, if you're talking like individual buyers, smaller groups like us or individual buyers that might be your followers, you're going to find the deals based on like these like really specific like sniper approach markets where you're going to pick properties off. And I think that's how the opportunities are going to present themselves, at least within the vacation property space. Can't speak to multifamily and other classes, but within our space, that's where we see how we're going to win.
Love it. Being a sniper. That's essentially what we're looking at as well for multifamily too. Is just we know our markets and we know what stuff should trade for. Or at least we know what stuff's worth, regardless of what it's trading for. And then we're just going out there and sniping out those good deals. So
that's how you do it.
Yep,
the extra hustle makes a difference.
Absolutely. So market changes on the horizon. Not the same as 2008, 2009. So I like it. All right. So for your company, you said you started with 3, went up to 100 million in assets under management. Where are you at today on that company as far as scale wise to show 15 years worth of scale?
Yeah, for sure. So we did a bit of a pivot in 2014. So we almost are looking at our company in 3, like almost 7-year iterations. I find 10 years is a little too far to plan, but 2 to 3 years is just too quick in real estate. Like we have to look at, so in my mind, I look at 7-year cycles. So first 7 years was that buying frenzy during that downtime. We really slowed our buying down in 2014, 15, when in reality, we probably could have bought for a couple more years. There was still a significant run up, mostly due to COVID, which is completely unexpected. But then we shifted our planning into developments. So now we were actually creating and building communities in different parts of the world because we had been buying so many assets. We met these amazing people in different places in the world, like Tuscany and Hawaii and California and Mexico. And we ultimately identified some really unique development opportunities. So ground up luxury, real estate communities to basically do the exact same thing, sniper approach, fulfilling a problem in a market. And all of our properties we created were STR friendly or short-term rental friendly. And I'm sure we could talk about regulation a bit, but in the STR space, the single biggest challenge the past 8 to 10 years has been these Airbnb laws, which obviously are just STR laws, and that have gone in that have prevented, have removed, or created restrictions around short-term rentals. So we saw this coming back in 2013, 14, 15. And a lot of people were buying in markets that we ultimately were going to be regulated eventually. Like New York was the first. We actually lost a couple properties back then because the hotel lobby is the strongest in New York, maybe anywhere in the world. They came up with laws and they enforced them pretty well, pretty quickly. Other markets are still changing their laws as we speak, but every lifestyle market in North America is going to have STR regulation if it doesn't have it already. So we spent time understanding that, and then we built communities in markets around that regulation or within the governance of that regulation, so we could create a safe haven for people that want to buy assets to short-term rent. And that was kind of our next 7-year iteration. And so then fast forward where we are today, those projects are all done, and now we're in the next level. And we're doing some pretty neat things. Our biggest project, it's our biggest project by a long shot, but we're doing a $1 billion development in Las Vegas, which would be a luxury residential community. Non-STR, it's actually going to be just a residential community. But it's amazing where the world takes you when you've built some different things, you've created these opportunities, and then you meet some amazing people and you collaborate on different concepts and ideas. And that's our biggest right now. And I don't know if we'll ever do bigger because that's pretty substantial for us. But it's we have other different communities and different works, and quite a bit of stuff in Italy going right now in Tuscany, which is pretty fun as well.
Okay, no, that's amazing. You said B with a
that's a B. Yeah,
that's huge. Congrats on that. I'm sure that's awesome to just. It's an awesome problem to solve, I guess. Back to your what entrepreneurism all about, right?
It's a product that's needed in Vegas, and it got approved on May 3rd unanimously by Henderson City Council, so suburb of Vegas. But Vegas really is just a group of suburbs that are all basically pulled together. And so now it's getting to the build phase and everything else. But the same problem there, they didn't have off-strip luxury condominiums, so we tried to solve that problem. It's gone well so far.
Love it. So you started, we'll move on after this question here, but you started Luxus Group. It was you and your wife, 3 houses.
Yep.
We kind of got an idea of what operations is like. What does your team look like now that can handle, operations in 3 different countries and, $1 billion projects?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved. I remember when we first launched this, we were meeting with people in coffee shops. I mean, that was our office. It was going to Starbucks and presenting to an investor, and you'd have, you didn't have iPads 15 years ago either. So you were, showing things on a laptop, and it was clunky and hard, and, trying to share the vision. And we always committed, we're going to have this asset management team. We're going to have this concierge team to plan your vacations, and we're going to hire people from the hotel industry. But like, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, because we dreamed it till it was realized maybe it's the right way, kind of manifested it. And that's what the team is now. So we've got about, I think currently we're down from our peak because we're in the process of downsizing a few of our existing funds and relaunching a new one. But around 40 employees, I believe. We've got about 20 plus in Canada, 6 or 7 in the US, 6 or 7 in Italy. And those are people that are full-time on the payroll. And then we have dozens and dozens and dozens of contractors globally that are almost perpetually employed by us, but it doesn't make sense to put on the payroll. But they would be, whether it's Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Hawaii, Italy. And so it's a pretty big team. And the scale up is interesting. Like, I'll look at scale. I mean, when you start off with something, like someone's listening to this now, they're starting with 1. It really is going to be you. You can't afford to hire an asset manager to asset manage a property or a concierge to do that. We are the ones taking the phone calls, planning the vacations, paying the bills, everything else. And that goes to a certain point. And then eventually you have to try to like multiply your unit factor. Like the unit you put in, you have to get like a scalable version. You get more units out. Let's say it's 1 to 1 to start. Eventually you want to get to a point you get 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. And that only comes when you get to a different level of scale. For us, that was about 15 to 20 properties. We started to see like an economies of scale actually achieve where what we put in, we actually got more out. We got more efficiencies. The crux was actually between about 5 to 10 properties. That was really, really hard because it was too much for us to handle. So we started building the team, but the team costs outweighed the money coming in. So that was a money losing venture. You're kind of 5 or less, you can kind of mom and pop it. 5 to 10, 5 to 15 is tricky. And then you get above that, you're just adding layers on top of your SOPs and you're starting to able to scale up quite efficiently. So for anyone who's listening to it, know that if you're going through a struggle of trying to break through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 properties, it's normal. And and you will feel the pain because you'll be working twice as much with less money coming in. But if you can break through to the other side, now you start making more money and you're more successful and it's more efficient and healthier for everyone.
Yep. And the same thing, we absolutely have those same kind of plateaus or ceilings in multifamily as well. When we hit about 500 units, my team's about 4 people. So 4 people and about 500 units. We have 4 partners. That's when it was like we couldn't scale further without hiring people, but our payroll, because they're syndication, so we're not, we have asset management fees and things like that, but that's not enough to hire like full-time asset manager, full-time construction manager. So it's like, okay, we really just got to suck it up and power through, get to 5 to like 8, because at, 800 to 1,000, that's when you can, that's when your payroll, you have enough income coming in to hire full-time payroll for those asset managers or project managers, things like that. So I completely understand.
And I think just to validate, like, good on you, Vince, to get to that thing. Most people quit at that stage. Like, it's, one or two things happen. They start doing a poor job. They start making less money. They think this is stupid, and then they leave the game. So if you can be that 1% or 0.1% that breaks through that, all of a sudden at that point, I'm never going to say it's easy. Nothing's easy about entrepreneurship and growing, but it's way easier because you actually have a team around you that can like take care of that stuff. So your asset managing, well, that's a very hireable skill, obviously. But Vince out there sniping deals is not hireable. Like that's you. So where's your time best? Taking a call with a leaky pipe or out there sniping for deals in Texas? And so you really have to look at the value you bring, and eventually there's going to be a moment, or there's lots of these ceilings you got to break through, where your time becomes more valuable than what you can hire out. So you have to bite the bullet. You're going to probably dip into your savings or dip into the red to hire the skills that are hireable and replaceable, So your special sweet secret sauce can be focused on the things that made you successful to begin with. It's really hard. People do not like.
Yeah. For somebody that's in it right now, I'm like literally living that right now with multiple, with my Tri-City Equity Group and Koala Installation, my two businesses. I'm like in that slump, and I'm like, I know what to do. Just keep grinding. It's gonna
get there.
Yep. So it's awesome to see people that kind of made it through the other side. And that's we're kind of pivoting a little bit, but like importance of like having mastermind groups and those type of groups, because you can see those people are like 10 years ahead of you or a couple years ahead of you, and like, okay, they made it through this slump or this whatever this you want to call it is. So that's awesome.
Sweet.
All right, pivoting a little bit. We talked a little bit earlier about the regulation. So yeah, I know. So I just lived in Hawaii. We were talking before we started that my last duty station for the military was on Oahu. So I lived there for like 3.5 years or something. And I saw how aggressive a government can be on the vacation rental, short-term rental market, and how swift like the rug can get pulled out from under you, where it's like, oh, I got this cash flowing asset, this condo in Waikiki, I'm making $5,000, $7,000 a month on it, on a, a 1-bedroom or something like that. And it's great. And then all of a sudden they come in and say it's all illegal, between, First Street and, whatever, Kamehameha Highway is all illegal now. And you're just like, well, now what do I do? How am I going to pay the mortgage next month? Right. So I'm pretty aware of how devastating that can be. So how have you pivoted and remained agile through these regulation changes that are happening? It seems like every month or every quarter is something new happening.
Yeah, no, it's hard. Like I admit, and it's because you buy in, like a lot of people follow the norm. So they don't necessarily follow I'm going to pick on real estate agents a little bit, and this I'm going to generalize for sure here, but you go to a new market, Oahu, Austin, beach cities like Carlsbad or whatever, the realtors are, by general experience, I've done hundreds of transactions, is they're going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm generalizing. They're not all bad. There's some great people. I'm going to get some love out here. But they're like, of course you can rent it. It's your home and you can rent it. Look, the guy down the street's renting. You could find 20 Airbnbs that are renting the same thing. But they don't tell you necessarily, because they haven't done the work and put the effort in. What's city council talking about right now? What are they evaluating as potential options? What's in the queue? What votes have happened? Look at the minutes, And because back then that was really hard to find. Like if stuff wasn't online, you have to call. Like I'll use Palm Springs area. There's like 9 cities there, all with their own rules in Palm Springs, Cathedral City, Rancho Mirage, Palm Desert, Indian Wells. And so we just spent hundreds of hours of researching to figure out where each city was at on their particular journey. And what we identified was everyone was going to regulate. But Rancho Mirage had come out and said, we are going to maintain short-term rentals. So we invested heavily into Rancho Mirage. And that's where we built our communities and we bought assets and everything else. So that was an example of, but other people bought in Palm Desert. Well, the Palm Desert put a moratorium on STRs. Some people got grandfathered. Most people got kicked out. And they lost all their STRs in Palm Desert. This is like separated by 3 yards, the street between those two cities. Like you can't even tell the difference when you walk from one side to the other. But that's the difference of losing a lot of money and hassle and pain, or making potentially a lot of money. So it just comes down to the hustle. So now I'll give compliments to the realtors out there. They've really done a good job. We work with them. It's kind of one of our things we do a bit as an advisory side. I started a YouTube channel just to put stuff out there. We don't actually actively promote it, but if anyone wants to listen to the YouTube channel, go on there. We don't sell anything. It's just free information. It talks mostly about STRs on the vacation space. We have an incredible agent and broker network that puts in the hard work to understand regulation. And then you can validate that regulation. So I've got a great guy, for example, the beach cities and between LA and San Diego. They're all going through this right now. It is bananas, the amount of changes. Some are set, some are not, some are in progress. And so his job is to stay on track, for us to keep an eye for the deals we're looking at, and also for the clients I refer his way. He is now the expert in that area that I would suggest of all the people we dealt with, who knows, what, don't buy in. I'm going to make up a name. This isn't accurate, but don't buy in Carlsbad yet because they're still working through it. But Mission Beach just approved 30% of their of total permits can be issued because Mission Beach has a culture of short-term rentals. That's probably fairly accurate, to be honest, but I can't remember if it's Carlsbad. Mission Beach, for certain, that's accurate. So perfect. I'm going to invest in Mission Beach. And so that's the stuff we do. And you work with the good people,
Mhm.
you will be able to overcome and understand. And then you actually have an edge on everyone else, because when regulation comes, everyone gets kicked out and you're the last man standing, or you in a small pocket of people, all the STR revenue goes to you. And so it's an immediate supply crunch instantaneously overnight. So be the expert. I mean, that's probably the greatest rule of thumb in my mind.
Got it. So put the time in, put the hustle in, be the expert. You mentioned city council. I've looked at I like HOA. I can't believe I just said that. Hold on. let me rephrase this. I like looking at HOA documents. I like those golf cart communities. The ones that have like you get your little golf cart and you go drive to. You got everything's kind of there. But going out, and if it is in an HOA, making sure you fully digest the HOA charters and everything like that. What is your opinion on HOAs, by the way? Because I don't like them very much. But
they're a necessary evil to the part of what we do in our business. And the problem with HOAs is that they can change so quickly.
Yeah.
And so that's why we started building our own communities, to create our own HOAs that had survivability, so people actually had clarity on making an investment into a community that allows short-term rentals. And then the guy that gets on the chair of the board, I'm going to pick on Chair Joe, and he's like, I had a neighbor and he rented it out to a bunch of yahoos from freaking LA, and I'm shutting down STR. And all of a sudden, like 6 months later, STRs are banned in the community. Like that's how quick it happens.
I've seen your exact story play out. Like, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like this guy, he's like, 4 years ago, there was a party next door, and ever since then, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like,
the best one we always get, because we had this happen to us, they left the garbage can out an extra like hour after, and they would take a picture and send it to the city that this STR left their garbage can out. And it's such BS, and it's very frustrating. And I think you made a very important point. There's regulation at all levels, so state, municipal, and then the HOA. Yeah. So in the case of Arizona, for example, it's regulated at the state level. Very different, because most places are municipal level. So they actually overruled regulation that existed at Scottsdale and Phoenix when the state implemented that. So really, you're looking at state rules, which allows STRs, and then it's HOA. So really understanding your HOA. And I never invest in HOAs anymore that have old rules. So basically, every HOA I'm exaggerating, from 80 to 2005 had the same canned HOA documents. No timeshares allowed. Use it as a single family residence. Don't run a business out of your own thing. And then house rules. The new versions have this incredible amount of depth to what defines a timeshare: fractional ownership, time intervals, STRs less than 7 days, 3 days, 30 days. So I only invest now into HOAs that have gone through the revote and the re-application of a new version of their rules. Because then if they do allow STRs, that's happened probably in the last 5 to 8 years, which means they're not going to change them. But you can almost be certain that if a community allowed STRs and they haven't changed those old rules, someone at some point, unless there's 50% of people rent their property out, you actually will have a vote will not be able to pass. They're going to change it, and you're going to be in trouble. And we've been there. I've made the mistake, so I just try not to make it again.
So just to kind of summarize that, you want to find, if it is an HOA, you want to find an HOA that's kind of already gone through the process and is clear on their stance in terms of short-term rentals and vacation. They haven't gone through that yet. That's what you don't want, right?
100% nailed it. They're clear in their stance. They've made a stance. We are an STR-friendly community under these governing principles. You have to have a registered property manager on. There has to be a 24-hour line to reach someone. They will have a very specific set of rules that allows and governs STRs, but they haven't gone through it yet. Expect that it could go the completely other direction where they completely shut it down. So I prefer going with newer HOAs or guys that have gone through it, because at least I know where I stand. And it's really hard for them at that point to mess up your program, because if they change it, you can say you set a set of rules for changing it. Those court battles don't win really any side, to be honest. Usually we just leave if that's what happens, but understand their stance, be clear on it, and then you'll be a lot safer.
Love it. Got it. So right now, again, we're recording this in 2022, August 2022. Yep. 2021 was absolutely insane for pretty much everything, real estate included. And I've seen a lot of vacation rentals, just things that, especially because Hawaii, because that's where I have some property out there. And it's like condos that were 500, 600,000, went up to, 800, 900,000 in a matter of a couple quarters. So do you think, or what is your stance on where we at for like a market saturation and things like that? Like, is there just too many now in some of these destination markets, and how is it going to shake out? What's your opinion on that?
You know what? It's kind of an it depends scenario. Like where I was just looking where the supply is coming online. Hawaii is a great example because you have really 4 different markets there, and with each of the 4 major islands that sell real estate, there's all these micro markets. So the situation where vacation properties, this is going to kind of stance number one, is especially Hawaii. It took a long time for Hawaii to catch up to pre-2008 levels. So there was a good buying run between 2011 and 2021, really, in Hawaii. But I don't think it was, I think they were actually undervalued. It's not like we're now overvalued compared. We actually just caught up about 8 months ago, 10 months ago. On the Big Island, for example, we do a lot of investing. It caught up to the 2008 levels. So they were talking 14 years after the fact. That's 14 years. Now, 2008 was a bubble for certain. But 14 years to catch up to a bubble, that's like unprecedented. So that's why I don't think there's going to be this massive reset, because inflation in 14 years, just to build that product, you can't build the product for less than almost what they're selling for. There's obviously some premiums in some communities. For, like, again, that's where you get to the micro level. So the second thing I believe with certain vacation real estate is how easy to replace down the road. So maybe not today, there's no supply. There's no supply levels anywhere in Hawaii. But how quickly can they ramp up and add 1,000 vacation rental units in Waikiki? Well, they can't. Like it's going to be virtually impossible Big Island because just lack of land, entitlement process. Hawaii slows things down. So I think Hawaii and other markets, I can list off a bunch that I think are fairly well insulated to experience more of a soft landing coming out of this because there's just not enough supply. Other markets like desert communities and such, where it's easier to ramp up inventory and supply, I think there's a greater risk. Depends if it's a red state or blue state as well, but I think red state probably a little less risk because that's where a lot of the money is being poured into due to net migration. But I think that overall, other markets that I think carry the greatest risk is where developers can ramp up very quickly, absent of COVID supply chain issues, and dilute the market with a tremendous amount of supply within the next 5 years. And those markets will have a longer recovery coming out of this next couple of years of uncertainty, probably. And the markets that are more insulated due to lack of new supply and lack of, there's always going to be demand for beachfront real estate. It's a complete certainty because there's wealth in North America and the world, and they want where it's hard to buy. And beachfront real estate, those are things that can happen. So,
and you mentioned something, and I try. And again, I am not a vacation expert person at all, but I'm pivoting to add vacation rentals as a portion of my portfolio. Yep. Mainly so I'm multifamily. My blinders aren't multifamily, but I got some capital and I'm going to deploy it over here with these guys that are vacation rental experts. Because I know the value of the asset. But one thing that you just said was that you have people coming all over the world. I know obviously Hawaii, we've been talking about that as a bit of a case study here, is great because we're getting a lot of Asian business and stuff like that.
Yes.
So that is something that vacation rental has that like multifamily and commercial doesn't. Mm-hmm. Like my multifamily clients are people that live in that town, right? Yeah. Vacation rentals are people that live anywhere, right? As long as you have a destination market, you're going to get people from Asia, you're going to get people from Europe, you're going to get people from whoever. So your client base, as far as, okay, is there enough wealth, or is there enough people that can afford to pay for this asset or this experience, in this market? Well, you're not looking at, little, Las Vegas area median or AMI, area median income and things like that, or household incomes in Las Vegas. Those aren't your clients. So, right. So that's where, when I saw that, or when I became aware of that, I was like, wow, this is a lot more stable than I thought it was. Because you're pulling wealth from the whole world, essentially, as long as you have that A-class destination market. So I thought that was a really good point that you nailed too. So great. So saturation, don't think it's going to be that big of an issue. I guess market depending, right? Real estate's very, very, very micro when you get down to it. So
I agree.
Do you manage? Sounds like Luxus Group has their own management. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So you've always done that. You've never done third party.
Correct. We do have, sometimes we start a new market, we will third party it out and then eventually we'll either roll it underneath us or kind of go permanent with that contractor. But no, we don't have a third party entity like company that manages all of our assets. We definitely are like a full vertical and acquire, manage. In the case that we rent, some cases we rent, sometimes we don't. And now we actually develop as well. But it's, yes, we have all in house. The only reason why I'm not against to say that it's the right way to do it, our model was so unique because we had this co-ownership model and we had this development model. And we also have some STRs. It was too complicated for an outside manager to be like, and we're like geographically 30 different markets. It was just like, mind is just, too much brain damage for a third party to do it. And so we don't make a lot of money on management, to be perfectly honest, but we control the experience. And the experience of our investors and our clients and the people doing it is what's most important to us. So if we have to break even on asset management or maybe make a small amount of margin comparative to the amount of effort it takes, I know my clients will have a better experience and thereby they will do more stuff with us. And so that's why we've done the full investment into the asset management side and client experience fully in-house. And it's served us well. It's, financially sometimes it's hard because you're carrying a big payroll. If you have a project go offline, you got to carry that team until a new project comes online. But it's, again, we look at experiential investing or experiential projects is what I think clients often in our case are looking for. And we can't guarantee that experience unless we control it.
Love it. So would you recommend a new investor, say that somebody that has their first or second vacation rental to either, as far as when they're trying to scale? So you have somebody, it could be one of the listeners, they got one, they got two under their belt, but they're like, okay, how do I scale this thing to 10 or 20? Mm-hmm. Is your advice based off of your experience, well, should they continue to do it in-house or they should delegate management off to somebody else for 20, 30% or whatever it is? Yeah. So then they can focus on their highest and best use of their time, which is finding and sniping those deals. So specifically for vacation rentals, somebody that has a couple and wants to scale, what's your advice for them?
It's a very good question. It's kind of it depends on the market, but if you have the time and you have access to your market, I think try to keep as much as you can in house, especially if you're scaling. There's kind of two scales. I think of head office scale. So I've got 30 properties, but in 30 different markets. Totally different scale than having 30 properties in one market or one community. We've always had small amounts of properties, like 1 to 5, in multiple markets. So we needed to have scale at our head office in depth on accounting, finance, asset management, concierge. But then local scale, so if I had 20 properties in one destination, if I could personally, like my wife and I originally access that destination reasonably easy, let's say I live in Los Angeles and I'm choosing to scale in Palm Springs and I have 10 properties. The more you can control that experience and build your own SOPs and your own team around that, the more likely you are going to stand out as a differentiator over the 1,000 other rentals in Palm Springs. And then you get repeat business, because the toughest thing in any of this, like when you're short-term renting, is acquiring a client. You're competing against a lot of inventory. It all looks pretty online, but most of it's average. And the other half of it is the experience is going to be as good. They get there and there's like one roll of toilet paper and then you have to go to Costco to buy your own stuff, or they're out of the soap, or they don't, 4 wine glasses and 2 are chips. So that kind of, well, why am I going back to that? But if I run into Vincent's portfolio of vacation homes and Vincent and his wife and his team manage it, and there's all the toilet paper in the world in that property. I don't have to shop for any toilet paper. And I've got a really nice bottle of shampoo versus a crappy one. And even stocked olive oil and all these things. It costs nothing, like literally nothing of actual money, but completely changes the experience. And I found third-party managers have not done a good job on being consistent with that, because they're used to running the lowest common denominator, which is the average person doing an average job on their rentals, because it's not a business for them. It's their side hustle.
Well, it's also not theirs.
And it's also not theirs.
It's not theirs. So.
Exactly. So a proud Airbnb host, for example, is going to do a darn much better job than a third party. Now, I will say there are some killer third-party guys out there, and some guys don't have the time or energy or want the brain damage. And I've recommended clients to some really great third-party managers, particularly in Hawaii and others, that they do a killer job. They give up 30%, but they literally don't have to worry about a thing. They have set a proper standards, usually more in the luxury space, like the 1 to 5 million space. But they do a damn good job, and then they just mail them checks. And some of my clients just have passive capital. They don't want to actually do it. So it comes down, are you trying to run a business, or are you trying to like just have a return on capital? In some cases, it's both. So it depends, but I'm favorable to both in that right situation.
Love it. Awesome advice. We're running short on time, so let's start wrapping this up.
Sure.
So got 1, 2, 3 more questions, and then we'll hit the fire round. So I guess we're not wrapping it up.
Let's keep going.
So one of the questions I missed in the beginning was, what is your why? Just for this, that was in your bio. That was one of the things that you are very passionate about for helping other people's find. So what is your why of this thing that you created called Luxus Group?
Our why is, thank you for asking. It really is what gets us up every day, and it doesn't feel like a job. It's getting paid for a hobby. It's helping people, like connecting their passions with real estate. So I think a lot of people they spend so much time in their main career trying to make all their money, and then they're not really sure what to do with it. And as it relates to, do I buy property here? Do I buy a short-term rental? Do I buy a condo? Do I go cruising or traveling? So my passion around travel is connected directly to real estate. So kind of get that experiential aspect of it. Our why is basically helping people make the absolute most of their experience in life, and as it connects and relates to real estate and travel. So I get the most joy. I probably spend a disproportionate amount of time on stuff that makes me no money by helping people, like helping with this stuff. Like, cause I love when someone comes back and says, "Oh my God, Steve, I thought that everyone told me to buy in Phoenix, but I did not know how amazing Tucson was, or how amazing La Quinta was." So we just create an environment that people can explore the world in a way that feels like safe, comfortable, familiar, so that they can see what is absolutely best for them. And when you make that big investment into an STR or personal vacation, we still do some travel planning for clients as well, as they come back and they say, "I made the 100% right decision because I knew the options that were available to me." So that's for me been the why, and I get the most joy when a client. We just finished the call before this with one of our clients from London who's building one of our projects in Tuscany. And they always wanted to restore a villa in Tuscany. We've created that opportunity for them. And they just said how incredible it's been for their family, their journey. And it's like, and they want to do another one with us, which is amazing. But totally, like, we've connected their invested their hard-earned money into a passion they've dreamed of for so long. And I mean, all the money in the world is not worth what you're going to be able to get out of that joy that you're bringing another family. And if you're bringing people joy and solving problems, then you're probably going to make money too.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. That is an awesome why, awesome passion you have there. And
Thank you.
Like you said, it's also could be very fruitful too. The more people you help, more rewarded you are. So
absolutely.
What is the biggest mistake you've made over your 15-year investing career, and what lesson did you learn from it?
Man, lots of mistakes. Just depends on what month you want me to go into. But I would say the biggest one was probably getting too scattered, trying to help too many people with too many things and solve too many problems. Again, stretch myself, stretch my team to a point we're not doing things as well as we would set ourselves up to expect we should be able to do. And now part of that is like my curious nature of wanting to see all the different ways we can explore. So a lot of people say, do one thing only and do it very well. But the problem is I didn't know what my one thing was. A lot of people say Apple, just Apple does the iPhone so well. That's why they're so good. No, they had 30 years of failures to figure out what their one thing was. And so for me, I think my mistake, but also my, or it's landed to where we are today, is sometimes too many things, too much for too many people, and you get burnt out. You get, your team gets burnt, and you're not there. But then on the flip side of it, if you don't quit and you work your way through it, and you're prepared to just get it done, you can end up on the other side with really maybe understanding your true purpose and what you're going to do well. So, and then the second thing I will say quickly, so that's probably stretched, is I had started projects where I didn't have the proper capital stack in place, and I was just not knowing. And so I learned a lot. But whether you're doing a $100,000 deal or a $100 million deal, really understanding the various tools on setting up your capital stack. For those who may not know, that's like you're spending $100,000 on a property, how much you're putting on equity, how much you're putting on debt, how much you're putting on mezzanine financing. Like, it's understanding that aspect. And I've made mistakes in the past by not having pursuing one path and not having the appropriate backups in place if that path was not successful. So I just definitely say, if you are going to invest, go to school on this. And there's so much free information on podcasts like yours and others, how to set up a proper capital stack. You'll be way more efficient with your capital. You'll make way more money and you'll sleep a lot better at night.
Love it. All right. Well, last question before we go into the fire round. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Ooh, 20-year-old self. I think as like probably other people have probably said in the past is like, don't sweat the small stuff. And I find this kind of a conflicting statement because I still get stressed and lose sleep at night over something that would be very small. That my 85-year-old self will look back at my 20-year-old self like, why are you worrying about that? Like, you should giggle. Like, this is so insignificant in the big picture. But I also think the conflicting side of it is it's because we sweat the small stuff that we find success in life. Because you do worry about a client experience or a deal or whatever continuously. So I just say that it's recovering quickly from those stressful moments. I screwed up a deal. I made a mistake. I didn't serve a client well. I made a bad decision. Someone's coming down on me for something, and then you get this high like stress in your life. That's totally normal. Just move through it quicker. So like, hey, Steve, don't worry about it. In the big picture, it really is minor. You can stress for an hour, but then get back on the program and get things going again. But don't let it drag you down for a week. Don't let it drag your family down or your partners down. So that would probably be the best advice I give my younger self. I still try to give it to myself every day.
Yep, I try to give myself. It was funny. We had one of my friends here is a multifamily guy, Javier Hinojo. He does the $1 billion boardroom, and we just had him out for our conference out in Hawaii as a speaker. And
cool.
His funny part was that he's only read one book in his life, and it was like Mikey and the Dragon or something like that. And it's written by the kids' book, children's book, written by Jacko Willink, the guy that wrote like Extreme Ownership.
Oh yeah,
and,
yeah.
The whole book is about the whole thing is like, don't sweat the small stuff. The things you're worrying about are the problems thing are probably not nearly as big as they are, in reality. But your mind, your subconscious, your bias, and all that stuff are making these things out to be these big dragons when in fact they're like these little things. So he has a very very comical way of kind of relaying a very hard topic in his speech, and it was very funny. But Mike and the Dragon.
I'm going to buy the book now. Jocko, he's amazing. I've read his other books. So I'll have to pick that one up now.
So he has like a whole children's line book.
I love it.
All right. So for the fire round, same questions we ask all of our guests. Ready?
Go.
All right. What book do you recommend other than Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Other than Robert Kiyosaki, I would go with Blue Ocean Strategy.
Love it.
Such a good book, easy to read, and it's how to find these amazing segments of real estate within these highly competitive markets. Such a good book.
All right. Love it. What is your superpower?
Superpower is, I would say, it's probably helping, bring the best out of people, or maybe not bring the best, connect people with their passions. That's what it is. Really understanding how I can help someone, and then connecting them with that help. And sometimes it's something we can do. Sometimes it's things other people can do. But I love helping people, and the more I can do it, the happier I am.
Love it. True go-giver. What is the biggest lesson you've learned over your career? If there's anything different that you haven't already said.
You know what? Biggest lesson I've learned is I want to be, they say, like the dumbest in the room. Like, I really, truly want to be the least smart person in the room. I've learned over time, the man on man, when you surround yourself with good people, great people that are smarter, equally diligent, same core values, really important aspect. You can learn so much from the people around. So I just think that it's just higher, smarter, equally hardworking, and core value in line, and you're going to be very, very successful in life.
Yep. And if you don't, you said higher, but if you can also join masterminds. That's why I think masterminds, good masterminds that align with what you're trying to go for are so powerful. Just to get around that group of people that are a little bit further along than you, they'll pull you up to their level so fast you don't even know what's happening. It's awesome. Yeah,
I agree for sure. I'm a big fan of masterminds as well. I've done lots of different versions over the years, but it's and I still am in them. They're hugely valuable to see people that are all different stages, from below, equal, and above you. You can help, you learn, and you can be mentored by. It's pretty powerful.
Absolutely. For the busy working professional who is working toward their financial freedom, what advice or tips do you have for them?
Just do it. I think it's take action. It will never be perfect. And I have to tell myself this, and my team this, you just get it to 80% to do it and figure it out as you go. And I think that most people are just paralyzed by fear. And as a result, there's no action. Don't wait. You can start, and we built a pretty significant size company in 15 years. Whether you started at 50 or 20 or whatever, it just takes one. And we just started with one. And it's risky and it's scary and it's hard and you might fail, but you'll never know if you're going to be succeed unless you take that first step. So just take action and get after it.
Yep. And just to foot stomp something you said the 80% solution. I think that is absolutely huge to get past that analysis paralysis that so many people find themselves in. Is like, for me, no project or nothing I do, no plan I do is ever going to be 100%. I'm all just guessing. I might be educated guessing, but that's all a business plan is. Like, I'm pretty sure it'll work out like this. But I'm 70% sure that it's going to work like this, and 30% just winging it. And that's to be successful. You're going to have some comfort in that mindset of like, nothing's ever going to be perfect, and you're just going to have to take the jump and figure out that last little bit as you go, because otherwise you'll never get started. So that is huge advice. Thank you.
Well said.
Well, that is our show. Thanks for being an awesome guest. This is an outstanding show, one of my favorite I've done in a while. And I can't wait for it to go live. So thanks again for spending the last hour with us.
Oh, man, that was a treat, man. Thanks. Great questions, great conversation. And thank you for doing this. It's something that I'm always inspired by. People are taking the time to put this content out there for just the benefit of those around them. So appreciate you, Vince, and looking forward to hopefully collaborating on something in the future and sharing good knowledge and wealth in the future.
Absolutely. And last bit here, how can our listeners get a hold of you if they're interested about more about your content or anything like that, or what the Luxus Group is up to these days?
For me, I mentioned earlier, I started this YouTube channel. So it's at the Luxus Group. So think of car company Lexus, but Luxus, so the Luxus Group. And the YouTube channel is very basic. I just put up 15 to 30 minutes shows that are really about helping people buying, selling, managing, renting vacation property. I'd appreciate a follow there. That's really the only social. I've always been very quiet on social, frankly. I am on Instagram, Stephen Petasky, but don't expect to be inspired by much there. It's pretty simple in the stuff that goes up. And then our company, the Luxus Group, or luxusgroup.com, you can check out things there. So those are our ways, but the YouTube would be the best.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thanks again for sharing, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Man, that was an excellent show with Steve. So much knowledge, so much insight on the market, on how to get competitive and aggressive with some vacation rentals. I love the luxury niche of vacation rentals. That's something that I'm going to be doing as well. A lot of my partners like D are in that space as well. It's definitely something that people should be considering in a piece of their portfolio in vacation rentals. Obviously, for me, I'm a multifamily guy. The majority of my wealth is in multifamily and commercial real estate, but I do see the value of vacation rental. So I'm going to be peeling off a little bit and buying a few of those as well. So definitely consider that as part of your portfolio, as part of your business plan of growing toward financial freedom. They provide a ton of cash flow if you buy right in the right markets, like Steve impressed upon, doing your research, looking into the city council, seeing where they're at, looking at their, HOAs and stuff like that, to really know that you're buying a good asset in a good market. So awesome show. And if you're interested in investing with us and learning about what we do, tricityequitygroup.com to learn more. You can set up a call me. I'm on, or all of us partners are on, we're on social media. We're on LinkedIn. You can join our Facebook group, the Honolulu Multifamily and More. Definitely reach out to us if you're interested in learning what we do on multifamily, Tri-City Equity Group, what we're doing in these times. 2022, it's kind of a little bit of uncertainty where the market's going, but we can jump on a call. Let's see how we're pivoting, how we're allocating our funds, and everything like that. So we love to have you part of our team. And any way we can add value to you, we'd love to add that. If you found value in this podcast, please subscribe, give us a great review. It always helps, with our rankings and things like that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And please share it if you know somebody that's interested in vacation rentals, and you think this will help them out, please share it with them, and we appreciate it. Well, till next time, thank you.